Probably the best known of the Isles of Scilly is Tresco to the north, which is famous for its subtropical garden, boasting species usually seen in the Far East or South America. There are still a few men here who make their livings from the sea, supplying the island's hotel, shop and pub. One of them is young Joby, who despite the vagaries of his income from fishing, didn't hesitate to chuck it all up when he was offered a place on the Scilly Boys Atlantic Row.
Rowing the Atlantic west to east, I'll be the youngest person by about, I think the youngest person up to now is 24, 25, so I'll be sort of 5 years younger than the youngest person who's rowed it this route up to now. I think everyone thinks we're pretty insane, but hopefully when we finish it, we'll prove that it was worth doing.
One person who'll be keeping a concerned eye on the progress of the Scilly Boys' voyage will be Joby's grandmother, Anne. There are no cars on Tresco, so like many of the locals, Anne uses a buggy to get about. Anne's farmed here most of her life and brought up a large family. Joby is the apple of her eye.
It's frightening when you see what the sea can do.
He's got the sea in his blood then, has he?
Obviously, yes, yes. He's passionate about gig rowing and being in boats and everything. He just loves Scilly.
He's a real Scilly boy.
Real Scilly boy, yeah.
He was your first grandson?
My first grandson.
Is that special?
Yeah. I think the first ones are always special, you know.
Will all the islands be praying for the boys?
I sincerely hope so, because the more people there are, you know, you can move mountains with prayer.
You'll be praying for them?
Oh, certainly will be.
Being so small a community, the Minister David's well aware that everyone on Scilly knows the Atlantic rowers and that their imminent departure will prompt many prayers.
When you're up against something, the trivia presumably falls away, and it's like people who are faced with terminal illness, or whether it's a transatlantic row, or whatever, some really big challenge in life. Yeah, it does make you think, well, what is important in life? What's the most important thing? What matters? People are concerned, and when they are concerned, they want to pray, and I think it's something that draws the people together in the community, and they will be really rooting in their prayers for those lads, those four lads as they go across the Atlantic.
David's let it be known that he'll be available at any time to talk to family or friends who need support at this difficult time. And of course the chapel will be open around the clock for those who may feel the need to use it. Meanwhile, there's been a bit of a disaster for Fraser's plan to hurry back to Scilly and get his boat ready for next week's inspection. With the children from the Five Islands School, he and Julie are stuck in Penzance heliport. Sudden storms and bad weather have unexpectedly hit the southwest, and it looks like he'll be even later getting Sea King ready than he'd hoped.
Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, we regret there is still no improvement in the weather. If there is no improvement, we will look at cancelling the flying for the day at 4 o'clock.
When does the inspector come over, and when have you got to get out of the water?
Well, the inspector's here on Wednesday until Friday, so obviously it's Monday today, so it's looking seriously like Monday's going to be out of the window and we're going to be going home tomorrow. But you can't do anything about the weather or the tides, so you have to try and work around them, you know, try and get in before it becomes bad, or wait until it settles down. But that may be after the surveyor's gone now, so it doesn't help for getting the boat in the water. I should be at home now, painting really, but obviously we're stuck with the kids at the moment, but there's not much you can do about the weather apart from complain.
Up on St Martin's, Toby spent much of the winter months racking his brains for ideas to improve the fortunes of the Seven Stones pub. His young chef Paulie has flown to India with his girlfriend Thea, where Toby's hoping he could work on a new wheeze, which he thinks could capture the imagination of his fellow islanders. Paulie is not here at the moment, is he?
No, he's having a great time with Thea.
his partner, and they've gone off to India, actually. And
They're in India now?
They're in India right now, yeah. They've travelled down various places. Last year he went over to Thailand to sort of to cook in various restaurants, just to polish up his sort of Eastern cooking, really. This year he's chosen to go to India, and he wants to sort of he wants to learn how to make the authentic Indian meal, really.
There's no Indian restaurant in...
There's no Indian restaurant at all, you know. So what we're looking for with Paulie on this holiday is to come back with some really authentic Indian flavours. We've talked about doing some nice Indian meal nights in the Seven Stones, which would be fantastic for us, and it'd be great for him to come back with all of this indigenous knowledge, you know, this great learning experience and great journey that he's going on, really. So that's going to be fantastic for us, yeah. He's taking a 40-hour bus journey all the way up the coast through Bombay, or Mumbai as it's called now, Surrey, all the way up here to Delhi.
In Delhi, Paulie and Thea are having a ball. They met last summer when Thea took a job behind the bar at the Seven Stones, and they've been inseparable since. Paulie's keen to give Thea a taste of the city. But Paul is also passionate about his food, and soon it's straight down to work, researching the Indian cooking he plans to bring home to Scilly.
Turn it over. On the bar. On Scilly, you just can't find a true Indian-style curry. And
You can't buy any curries, can you?
not really, no. Nothing of a great flavour or taste. The food which we've tasted here is fantastic. And the best places were found at these street stalls. And I mean, we're here in Old Delhi. We're just going to try out a few places here.
So we're on the quest then for the perfect curry for Scilly.
That's it, the curry for Scilly.
Paulie has a very hands-on approach to learning his new skills.
What are you going to do? Ah, dear.
You didn't feel too self-conscious up there?
No, I couldn't. All I could do is laugh at myself, really. Okay.
But it seems he still has quite a bit to learn.
Oi! I'll buy that one.
You're either really rubbish or the man makes it look very easy.
Back home, the boys are spending every available moment on their rigorous training schedule. They're due to leave the islands in just a few weeks' time and need to get used to a regime where they row for 2 hours on, 2 hours off, sleeping in between in the two little cabins fore and aft. The Reverend David's been asked to give the boat a traditional Scilly blessing.
This is what's the blessing itself, which I prepared. And then this is the little container for some oil, which we're going to bless the boat. I'm going to bless the boat, anoint the boat with some oil.
What is the oil?
Well, it's holy blessed oil. It's not engine oil, that's what you were worrying about.
Special oil.
Special oil, yes. It's going to be blessed, and it's going to just anoint the boat with that.
It's going to be quite a moment, this, isn't it? Because there's a huge groundswell of emotion behind these boys.
Well, yes, and it's, I mean, as it gets ever nearer, and the 1st of June approaches, I think it's dawning on everyone what a major undertaking this is, and they're hoping that they'll be kept safe, obviously, and that they will succeed and all come back here in one piece. Not too long a time, we hope, rowing across, but it's a huge venture for them, really, and so yeah, we wish them all the best. The whole community will be.
It's been arranged for the boat to be taken out to America on a container ship and for the boys to fly to New York and then row out of New York Harbour beneath the Statue of Liberty.
Hey Tim, how you doing?
Their friend Vicky's been helping out with all the admin and backroom paperwork for the trip.
Yep.
So I think the boat's going to get over there by the 21st, 22nd, something like that? Or it's got a clear customs,
leaving
hasn't
here
it?
5th.
I think Jim and I are looking at coming out on about the 28th.
But Vicky stumbled across a potentially major problem, which nobody had foreseen. Vicky and fellow islander Ginger Jim, who's also helping out, have just had a long conversation with officials at the US Embassy in London. They're demanding an interview with each of the boys in person before authorising any permits to travel.
They've got an appointment with the American Embassy for their visas.
Right,
that's
so
why
because of the new terrorism laws and so on, they've got to go and present themselves at the embassy.
Because we're going underneath an area that's it's highly sensitive.
Because of 9/11 and all that.
Yeah, and all that area is a highly classified area, difficult to venture into.
So it's not automatic
No.
clearance. And quite a lot hangs on this visit.
Well, it does indeed.
Faced with all the difficulties, they've learnt that 3 of the 6 other teams planning the race have pulled out. The boys are told to drop everything and get the next plane to the mainland.
Yeah, that's something that's pretty big, isn't it, that we've got to sort out. Well, our friends in America have decided we've got to have a special visa to come into America because we're flying in with a one-way ticket, we understand. So, bless them, we've got to travel all the way up to London individually for an appointment to get a B1, B2 visa.
So because you're flying in, you're going on a single ticket, and of course you haven't got to return because you're rowing back.
That's right.
A problem for the US government.
Yeah, I think it rings a few bells with them, so...
You're not normally allowed in on a single ticket?
I don't believe so, no.
You've got to have your fingerprints taken, is that right?
Yeah, we got the full, you've got to take all the pads from each finger, so they said make sure you haven't got any cuts or blisters, which is a bit difficult when we're trying to organise a cross-Atlantic row at the moment, but the possibility that the US Coast Guard, if we don't have the right documentation, can bring us back and deport us altogether, isn't it?
I guess so. I do so. I've never done it before.
So I think it shows the huge amount of things that we've had to contend with throughout the whole project. I mean, there's a huge amount with the boat, and then their side of it, the US side of it, and then the race organisation side of it, and our own physical and mental preparation. I mean, it shows what a huge task we're embarking on, I think.
If you don't get this visa, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Well, we can't do it.
There's only a small window in the North Atlantic weather patterns for the voyage to take place. If the US Embassy decide not to give the boys a visa, or even if there's an administrative hiccup or delay, the trip that's been 2 years in the planning may never happen. In the next programme, Fraser's back on Scilly with only hours to spare to get the boat inspected. Now he's having trouble just getting Sea King into the water.
See, she's sinking there a bit, like that bloody front wheel's going down, right?
And the Reverend David speaks for Scilly as the islanders gather to see off the little rowing boat on the start of its epic journey.
This boat represents the hopes and dreams of the 4 men who will row her across the Atlantic. Bless her as she begins her journey and in her coming home.
On the Isles of Scilly, Fraser Hicks is again having big problems getting his boat Sea King into the water in time for the new season.
These are quite stressful times for you, aren't they, Fraser?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I try not to get too stressed, if I can help it.
The little rowing boat, the Scilly Boys, is almost ready to set off for New York and its epic row across the Atlantic. The Reverend David's organising a traditional blessing of the boat before it leaves.
It's dawning on everyone what a major undertaking this is, and they're hoping that they'll be kept safe, obviously, and that they will succeed and all come back here in one piece.
But the 4 Scilly Islanders planning to make the row have been summoned to the US Embassy for special visas. Everything now hangs on this critical visit to London. If you don't get this visa, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Well, we can't do it.
With Easter just days away, the storms that have recently ravaged the Isles of Scilly have been replaced by persistent rain. But the first stirrings of the all-important holiday season are nonetheless beginning to get underway. The boats that ferry locals and visitors between the 5 islands and keep the Scillonian economy alive are all having their annual safety and maintenance checks. Before they can operate for the new year ahead, each boat has to be issued with a licence by CID, the Coast Guard and Maritime Agency inspector who's been sent over from the mainland. The Minister David Easton knows this is a critical moment in the island's year.
They've got to get their boats in the water by Easter and get their licences because, they're carrying members of the public, so their boats have to be approved. And if they don't get those licences or don't get their boats ready in time, well, they've had it.
One by one, CID's ticking off all the boats, so they can waste no time getting down to business. But there's one particular boat that seems to be missing. As usual, the legendary boatman Fraser Hicks is well behind the others. After long delays getting his beloved Sea King ready for the new season, the boat is only now being launched from the yard where she's wintered. There's no quay here, so they have to drag Sea King across the beach to the water. Sadly for Fraser, the outgoing tide combined with the recent heavy rainfall has left the sand sodden.
See, she's sinking there a bit like that bloody front wheel's going down, right?
For a boat of this size and weight, it looks like being a tricky business. Fraser's wife Julie's busy making bacon sarnies for the launch team.
It's a bit of a nerve-wracking time, really. It's quite a difficult thing moving the boat down there. It's a very narrow gap. The boat's sliding around on the sand. I can't possibly go down and watch it. I just go down and deliver the sandwiches and leave them to it. Very tense down there. Best to keep out of the way.
Down on the sand, they've done all they can. Eventually, they abandon the boat and wait for the incoming tide to float her. Rumour has it that Julie's about to arrive with the bacon sarnies. Meanwhile in London, one of the most fortified buildings in the United Kingdom is about to receive some slightly nervous visitors. Ever since 9/11, the US Embassy in the heart of the capital in Grosvenor Square has been ringed with concrete walls and miles of metal railings to protect it from terrorist attack. And it's here that the Scilly boys must present themselves for their extraordinary request for a visa to enter the US on a one-way ticket.
Everyone needs to pass it, everyone needs to get their interviews right. We all need to get the visa, otherwise it's over.
Have you heard about some of the difficulties that you might encounter inside?
I know, aside from the actual interview, you've got to take fingerprints. They get scanned in, and it says to be free from cuts and blisters, which may pose a problem, because I know the other boys have got quite tough manual jobs and they've always got busted up fingers, and I know Joby's got really tough hands because he's been fishing since a young age, and he's got really leathery skin on his hands, so I'm not sure how they'll print off.
Step forward, please, sir.
The US immigration authorities are used to facing oddball requests, but they're going to need some convincing that the boys intend to make the 3,000-mile journey home to the UK from New York in a little rowing boat. Back on Scilly, the majority of the tripper boats are now up and running, and business is warming up. It took Fraser 4 bacon sarnies and 5 hours, But with the help of the incoming tide, Sea King is at last afloat. Fraser and his daughter Rebecca are racing to get everything shipshape and in order for the imminent arrival of Sid, the inspector.
Put some more oil in.
The boat's over 60 years old, and some parts, like the steering, need a bit more tender, loving care than the younger boats.
Now turn it back again. Well, turn it, keep turning it towards you. Just come back a touch there, that's enough.
Sid, the inspector, has almost finished signing off the last boat before Sea King. Fraser's only got a few moments for some last-minute checks.
Check out the old public address. Too late, mate. How's that? Is that all right?
I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on the high over vales and hills, and all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils.
Bit of poetry there. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, we can do Shakespeare as well if you like.
Then at last, the moment of truth.